Our next subject is the shell ornament. And the shell is quite often used as the centerpiece for a more elaborate ornament. So for example, here you can see shell in the center. Again, here the shell is in the center. And quite often they are used on top of some pieces of furniture or mirrors, like here. The central part of a fireplace decoration. This one is very ornate, very elaborate. Okay, the shell can have many different forms. As you can see from these reference photos, they can range from something simple like this to something very elaborate like this one on the fireplace. Different patterns, some very curly ones. And this composition behind the lion head could probably be classified as a shell as well. Okay, here's a nice example, very beautiful. And sometimes they are used at a 45-degree angle, like in this example of the mirror. Some nice shells in the corners. Okay, here's the shell on top. Another curly example. This one quite nice. Okay, a multi-layer shell, and this would probably be made from 3 different shells. So starting with the largest one, then add another layer on top, and another one on top. And we're going to start with some basic examples. I think something like this might be a good first example. Alright, as you can see, the shell is composed from multiple elements. The main shell, 2 scrolls in front, and then upside down smaller shell in the middle here. I'm just gonna model this main shell. And if you look closely at these examples, you will see this pattern quite often. A large shell, a couple of scrolls, and another ornament in the middle. Okay. Sometimes these scrolls can go like that, but the common thing is that the shell is in the background and it's covered here in the center with some other ornaments. So when you have some shells modeled, you can change these front ornaments as you wish, and you can reuse these shells and get some very different ornaments. So I'm gonna make this shell without the scrolls. Okay, so let's go to 3D Max, set up a background image in the front viewport. And let's get started. So there are multiple ways you can start, but your main goal is to achieve something like that, like this base mesh. So I'm just gonna start by outlining the basic shape. I'm ignoring these rounded ends for now, and I'm gonna create them a bit later. Okay, so I think this one is not needed. Actually it is, since we're going to use the symmetry modifier. And this is going to be the start of this flute, or this segment. Okay, let's check if everything is set to corner. And it is. And we can collapse to editable poly. Okay. And now I'm just going to use the cut tool to cut in the basic shape of these segments. You don't need too much detail at this moment, but try to make the count of vertices the same. So I'm using 2 intermediate vertices between these 2 endpoints. Okay, and just roughly follow the shape of the shell. Right, now I'm going to connect these vertices to form a grid. You could also start with a plane and extrude these edges to get the same results. And it doesn't really matter as long as you have something like this to work with. Okay. So most of the time these shells have a curved shape. It's not a simple flat piece of geometry, but usually it's something like, you can see they're curved in many different ways. In this example, I think there was a larger photo here, and yes, you can see this center point is slightly rounded, and it goes like that on the sides, a little curve, and a slightly larger curve on the top, curving forwards. And we're going to try to make something like that by moving some vertices manually. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to move these towards the front. And then I'm going to move these vertices slightly backwards. Make this transition a bit smoother. Okay. Maybe rotate this a bit and move backwards. All right. Now let's add the symmetry modifier and see how it looks in full size. So right now the shell is a bit too thin. I think the photo is not perfectly straight, and the shell is slightly rotated. So I'm going to make it a bit wider. By moving these vertices towards the right side. Okay, and that's gonna be fine. The overall shape looks okay. Maybe this part is a bit too distorted. And now I'm going to add some more segments to add more detail to this object. So select these edge rings and select the Flow Connect tool from the Graphite Modeling Tools. And you get a nice smooth transition here. Okay. Let's move this outwards. I'm exaggerating the amount of movement. So since it's going to be rounded after Turbo Smooth, the sharp ends are going to go backwards, like they're going to get rounded like that. Hopefully. Okay. And I'm also going to select these sharp ends, and from the top view I'm going to move them slightly forward so they are in line with the overall shape of the object. Alright, that's fine. Alright, and now about the symmetry modifier, I'm gonna add edit poly and start inserting some geometry. So one by one I'm gonna select these segments. I'm gonna use the insert tool to bring them inwards. About this much. So apply and continue, select the next segment, apply, and move on until you get all of them. And looks like I have to fix these ends manually. And it's not really that difficult. Just move the vertices over there so they are arranged like this without any edges crossing each other. Okay, and this end should be inset a bit more, since these separating polygons between the segments are doubled up like this, and they're on top, and here on top there is only one segment. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move these down to make this top inset a bit larger. Like that. And I'm not too worried about moving it out of the original shape. It's not gonna matter too much, but if you wish, you could use the constraints to move them along edges. But I don't think that's really necessary in this case. Okay. So something like this. And now you have two options. You can proceed without adding the shell modifier, or you can add the shell modifier and continue modeling. And I'm gonna add the shell modifier. First I'm gonna add the symmetry, of course. Just copying the old modifier, and then I'm gonna add the shell modifier. And the reason I'm adding the shell is that I want the backside to be good looking as well, not only the front but the back too. Okay. So the thickness could be about right. I'm going to collapse to editable poly. And let's collapse some edges here, just to simplify it a bit. The shell slightly messed up our model, but we're going to collapse some edges and fix that. Okay, I'm just going to do one side. Alright, now we need to create these depressions and these sharper elements between the segments. So I'm going to add an edit poly modifier just so I don't mess anything up. And I'm going to select these edge rings that were formed by insetting the segments. Okay, so these are selected. Control click on the polygon here, and you should have a nice selection like this. And I'm just going to extrude it out by using the local normals. Okay, like that. I think that's enough. Now let's try on Turbo Smooth and see how it looks. Okay, getting closer. And what we need to do is move some edges back to create those depressions in the segments. I'm going to do the same thing on the back side as well. Alright, so select these edges and move them back. Okay, now deselect these lower parts and move these upper parts a bit more. Okay, so we have these depressions. And now I think we need to add some more geometry here. I'm going to select these loops. Okay. I want to chamfer them so we can get a sharper corner here. So loop. And make sure it connects all the way around. Right, and I'm gonna try to use the extrude modifier now. In this case, I think it's gonna give us a cleaner result than the chamfer modifier. So when you're extruding edges to chamfer them, set the height to 0 and increase only the width. So like that. Okay, some nice sharper corners. And we have to go in and clean this part up a bit, just by target welding. And we can easily fix these triangles here. And from the front, the same thing. Okay, and let's see how it looks. That's quite alright. Okay, so let's add the symmetry modifier. Just below the Turbo Smooth. Okay, the whole thing could be a bit wider. And this part could have a bit more detail. I'm gonna select the edge ring. And I'm gonna connect. Actually, let's try the flow connect. Let's see how that looks. Looks a bit better. This one looks a bit weird. Alright, so I think that's close enough. Just adjusting some minor proportions. And there's your shell. And you can use it this face forward, or you can use it with this face forward as well. And if you want to save some polygons, you can make a different variation like this. So let's collapse to the symmetry. And you can make a variation like this by selecting this edge ring, delete the backside, and just select this outline and Shift plus move it back and flatten it by scaling down the y-axis. And you can save some polys this way, if you are sure the backside is not going to be seen. Alright, so that's it for the shell.